Thank you for joining us today for the virtual Sunday service with the Center for Creative Living. CCL, a charter of the Universal Church of the Master, has served and supported the spiritual needs of its community here in the Bay Area for over 20 years.
Good morning and welcome to the Center for Creative Living. We're so glad to have you here. This is Gay Pride Sunday. It's been 50 years since we had the protest at Stonewall that brought about the rights for people, the gay, lesbian, trans, questioning, queer, to find out how they could fit in to our society. And we are so lucky today. We're going to have the president of the Billy DeFrank Center, one of the largest gay, lesbian support systems in all of the United States. Her name is Gabrielle Antolovich, and she's going to be speaking to you about what we can do to help support this group. And now, let's move on into our program. Welcome, Center for Creative Living, San Jose, California.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Antolovich, and I'm with the Billy DeFrank LGBTQ Plus Community Center. And, you know, this is Pride Month, the nationally declared Pride Month, even though in Silicon Valley we celebrate Pride at the end of August. And prides all over the country are in different time slots. However, it is June Pride Month, and it has been a very different kind of pride for many reasons. One is COVID-19, and everyone has been shut down, and I'm talking about businesses, and we've had to stay in our homes. And so it's very difficult to imagine, how do we celebrate Pride if we can't be out there? And then, of course, when the George Floyd murder happened, it has changed everything. And the Billy DeFrank LGBTQ Plus Community Center, you know, we immediately realized that we're going to have to delay Pride for a while because we wanted to give space to the Black Lives Matter movement and join in with them. Because let's face it, the Stonewall Inn, which was this bar in New York, and the police were constantly harassing the LGBTQs there, and also everywhere. And what happened is, in 1969, suddenly the LGBTQs decided they didn't want to take it anymore. There were certain circumstances around the situation. A lot of political discussions had been happening. Other justice movements had been flaring up. You know, the Black movement was also very active at the time or before then. And there were different revolutions happening, including women's liberation. So it's not as if the Stonewall happened in a vacuum. There were other justice movements happening, as well as in quiet places, LGBTQs were starting to discuss how the harassment and discrimination is really, it's unfair, it's not just, what are we going to do about it? Little publications were going on. Even the Daughters of Bilitis were meeting, the lesbians, and a lot of gay men's groups. So, like I said, nothing happens in a vacuum. But for some reason, you know, it's a bit like when Rosa Parks said, I'm not sitting in the back of the bus, you know, a movement sparked out of that. That also didn't happen in a vacuum. So the same thing with Stonewall. And what happened is there were riots for weeks. So when I think about Pride, it did start off as riots against police brutality, which is what is happening with the Black Lives Matter movement. And so we are, especially people like me, who actually was part of the Stonewall Revolution. I know I was in Sydney, Australia, but you know, the gay liberation movement was sparked into a global movement, just like Black Lives Matter is right now, a global movement. And we were a global LGBTQ movement coming out of the closet big time. And it was riotous, yeah. And so we definitely, and myself, am being triggered by what has been happening in a good way, I have to admit. I'm excited that finally people are listening to, you know, people of color have not been listened to. And the racism for Black and brown people seems to have continued despite everything. And I wanted to, you know, mention, I saw this poster of a young woman, a young Black woman, saying, George Floyd isn't a wake-up call. The same alarm has been ringing since 1619. You all have been hitting the snooze button. And that is the truth. I mean, okay, the Black Lives Matter movement is very grateful to have allies that are not people of color, but we are acting as if, oh, wow, this is the wake-up call. Well, like this young woman said, the bell's been ringing to wake us up since 1619. That is a very long time. But it's better than never. So here we are. The LGBTQ community started off as a riot. Black Lives Matter is in a riotous explosion right now, and we have been embracing that movement. And it's so beautiful in some ways. You know, the explosion of anger, the explosion of expression, the demands. And some people are saying these are extreme demands, defund the police. Well, they don't necessarily mean take all their money away and disband them. It's a good catch cry to get people's attention. I'm not going to go into the details of that. You can look that up on the internet. But what's great about it is that young and old are involved. I'm one of the old people that was there when Stonewall happened, and I was one of the first people to come out of the closet and went on national television and suffered a great deal because I couldn't get a job through the 1970s because nobody wanted to hire an openly gay person. That's what we called us back then. I'm now a genderqueer lesbian. We didn't have that terminology back then. Back then, I was a young dyke, you know. So, we didn't know, we were naive, politically naive. We thought coming out of the closet was it. We didn't think, oh my God, I can't get a job now because they are able to discriminate against us because we're openly gay. And, you know, what would happen if I was in the closet? If they found out, they could still kick us out. So anyway, one issue begets the next issue. And so the ball is rolling now with Black Lives Matters. And what is happening is this wonderful joining together. For example, the people in the LGBTQ community that are the most marginalized right now are the Black and brown people, especially the Black trans women who are murdered the most and suicide the most. And so what we had just last, not so long ago, we had a Black Trans Lives Matters rally outside the Billy DeFrank LGBTQ Community Center. And what was exciting about that, there were a number of things. About 1,000 people showed up, and they took up all of the space all around. It had to be outside because we're closed. But it was really amazing how we had all these speakers. Silicon Valley Pride actually organized the event, and the Billy DeFrank Center helped get the word out. And we didn't start getting the word out from, it was only from Friday to the following Wednesday, and 1,000 people showed up. Isn't that amazing? Oh my God. So here's what's extraordinary. So Roy, who is this wonderful gay guy who he's runs the bike party, he showed up with these amazing speakers on his bike, so we could Bluetooth to his speakers, and he was right in the middle of the crowd. So all 1,000 people could hear the speakers. That's number one. Technology works. It's great. But what was even better was the speakers went from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. No rally has ever had that many speakers that went for 2.5 hours, and the crowd did not dissipate. Everyone stayed. And also, they were filmed. So you can go to the Silicon Valley Pride website, Facebook page, and listen to the speakers all over again. I have to do that because I was so excited having everything happening there that I couldn't even listen to every single speaker. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I understand that, we've all been alone at home with our loved ones, or literally alone. So it's exciting to see real people of the same ilk, the same politics, the same outrage, the same, wonderfulness and fabulousness. So it was an extraordinary experience. And one of the things that, I really, really wanted to express to everyone is that they are welcome here. No matter what past experiences you've had, you are welcome here now. And one of the things that the LGBTQ community has done, and you'll see it behind me, is we have added the black and brown stripe to the rainbow flag. And that now is very much new, and it's here to stay. Because the truth of the matter is they have been the least accepted, not so much, the least accepted within the community and the least accepted in the society at large. So we are all making an effort to be more inclusive. And so that's a very positive and exciting thing, while at the same time, we have to really think about what have we done in the past that has perpetuated racism, and what can we do differently? So one of the things that the Billy DeFrank Center specifically has thought about is that our namesake, Billy DeFrank, he's not French. He was a drag queen, and he was an African-American drag queen, yeah. And we have taken on his name. He was very well known in the 1970s, And when the Billy DeFrank started in 1981, he had already died a year before that. So he's our namesake. And people talk about Billy DeFrank as him, and then we talk about Billy DeFrank, the community center. So here's my message that is more about, instead of saying we have taken on his name, when I talk to people about who Billy DeFrank was, he was loving, he loved everybody, he didn't care what your color was, he didn't care what sexual orientation you were, he didn't care if you were male, female, or non-binary, although back then we didn't have the terminology non-binary, but there were a lot of us who didn't fit in to any kind of category, and he loved everybody. And he used his drag performances as a way of doing fundraising for LGBT groups that needed money to continue. So instead of taking on his namesake, we have decided to embrace his spirit, to bring him into the center, and to remember that as a center, we want to embrace Billy DeFrank's spirit of unity, fighting for justice, caring about everyone. He even cared about heterosexual people, our allies. He cared about everyone. And he really is the embodiment of what we all want to be and need to be as a community center. So that's one of the things, one of the changes that the Billy DeFrank Center wants to make so that we can embrace our Black and brown and transgender people better, be more like what Billy DeFrank was like, be him, and have that spirit throughout the rooms in the Billy DeFrank Center. And I think that can really shift the energy so that when you walk in, you can feel it. You can feel, I belong here. It doesn't matter who else is here, but I belong here. And that's how Billy DeFrank always made people feel when they met him, when they came to his drag show. He always made you feel welcome. And that is an important shift for us. So that's one of the things that we are doing, and you have to think about how you can be more welcoming of the people who are more on the fringes. So that is a challenge that we are facing and everybody else is.